From the 1950s and up to the very end of the 20th century, the Soviet T-54 and the T-55 medium tanks were busy making a name for themselves all over the world. These fearsome, reliable vehicles served in South America and in Africa, in the Finnish snow and in the jungles of Vietnam. They were used by dozens of armies. With this series, the Soviet tank industry managed to make both one of the most versatile tank platforms of the 20th century and the most ubiquitous tank ever. Today, we're speaking about the tracked Kalashnikovs, the T-54 and the T-55. The idea for a new tank arose as early as in 1944, when Soviet engineers were busy working on the T-44 medium tank. Its engine was transversely mounted, the turret placed directly over the center of the vehicle, and the tank proved to be almost invincible when tested against guns of Tigers and Panthers. At the same time, the military wasn't happy with its 85mm cannon and thought that the turret protection was still insufficient. Basically, the army wanted a similar tank, but armed with a 100mm tank gun. For example, the D-10 tank gun. Soon, there were a few variations ready. The first prototype still largely resembled the T-44, but there was a more ambitious one as well, coming with even more armor. After the trials, the vehicle received a redesigned, roomier turret inspired by the turret of the IS-3 heavy tank. The chassis was lengthened a bit, the frontal glacis was reinforced by removing the observation slit for the driver, and armor in the front of the hull reaching 120mm. And so the T-54 was born. Many of the things you see on a T-54 became a sort of a template for lots of other Soviet medium tanks and MBTs, both good things and bad things. For example, we're talking about its very small and cramped fighting compartment, or the fact that it couldn't depress its main gun by more than 4 degrees, and that's when you had full 10 degrees on a Centurion or a Patton. The T-54 was accepted into service in 1946, with full-scale production firing on all cylinders in 1947. Even the earliest production vehicles of the series were a huge leap forward when compared to the tanks of the previous generation. For instance, the T-54 had better protection than the classic German Panther, while also being considerably lighter. With the weight of only 36 tons, it was also pretty agile and easy to transport. Moreover, the T-54 was armed with a powerful and quick-firing D-10 tank gun, clearly one of its main selling points. At the same time, it wasn't without flaws. As testing showed, the turret had prominent shot traps that could bounce enemy shells right into the roof of the hull, and initially there were some problems with reliability. A new, modified version of the tank went into production in 1949. The armor in the front got somewhat thinner, with the upper plate only 100mm thick, but the vehicle was fitted with a new, sturdier, dome-shaped turret with flat sides. Furthermore, the fender machine guns were removed, making the vehicle a bit lighter and more reliable. That wasn't all. In 1951, the T-54 got a new turret again, eliminating turret shot traps once and for all. In the following years, the tank was produced in huge numbers, with Soviet engineers constantly improving the reliability of the design. The T-54A variant got a D-10 TG tank gun with an STP-1 Horizont vertical stabilizer, which was also fitted with a new turret drive. Later, this model was exported to China, where it served as a basis for the Chinese Type 59. During 1958, the Soviet Army received the T-55, basically the very same T-54, but with an NBC protection system and some other upgrades like a two-plane stabilizer and new fuel tanks added to the front of the hull. Visually, it's almost indistinguishable from its predecessors, with only a few minor changes in its appearance. The T-54 had a dome-shaped ventilator on the turret's roof, and the T-55 had to get rid of it to get the sealing system in. The engine compartment, housing a more powerful engine, is also a bit different from what you see on the T-54, but that's about it. There are two vehicles of this type in the Soviet tech tree. The 1962 version of the T-55A with additional NBC protection, and the premium T-55AM1, a modernized variant introduced in the early 1980s. It got additional armor, the Volna fire control system, the Bastion ATGM, and a new engine to boot. The T-54 was also officially made in several countries of the Warsaw Pact, but its production in China is a whole new chapter to its story. Basically, the Chinese made their own series of tanks based on the Type 59. The Type 69 is armed with a 100mm smoothbore cannon of Chinese origin and equipped with a more powerful engine. The ZTZ-59D1 comes with ERA blocks and a 105mm gun, akin to the British L7. The Type 69 2G is an export version sold to Bangladesh, etc. It's no surprise then that the T-54 holds the title of the most produced tank in history, with around 70,000 units made. Time doesn't stop for anyone, though, and by the early 1960s, this tank was already succeeded by more advanced contemporary designs. Tanks of the T-54 and the T-55 series are an all-out classic of the Cold War. At the same time, they're still being used today by quite a few different countries. Fun fact: you can actually buy yourself a real T-54 with a demilitarized main gun right now. It costs a pretty penny, though. What are your favorite vehicles of this series? Tell us in the comments below, because I'm busting to know, and I know that Gaijin would love to know too. Thanks.